Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Bam Rodriguez takes November 9th defense versus Pedro Guevara. It seems that the rumors, they checked out, that Bam would be returning very soon.
And not against Gallo.
As he surveys his list of champions, one in particular is special to the World Boxing Council president, Mauricio Suleiman. Unbeaten super flyweight champion Jesse Bam Rodriguez is a sensational, out-of-this-world phenomenon, Suleiman told Boxing Scene hours after it was revealed at the weekly WBC news conference that Rodriguez will now defend his belt November 9th in Philadelphia against WBC interim champion Pedro Guevara of Mexico.
Guevara announced that he'll meet the 24-year-old Rodriguez at the WBC event, with Ring Magazine reporting the news first on Tuesday.
24 years old. Bam Rodriguez is just 24 years old, and look at everything he's done by age 24. He's already a two-division champion. He's already taken on a who's who, a list of who's who fighters in the super flyweight division that is sometimes denigrated because those fighters were in the latter stages of their careers when he fought them. It's still impressive, though, that he did this by age 24.
He's young.
Remember, he took the Carlos Cuadras fight on short notice.
The details matter.
He took that fight on short notice, jumping up 2 weight classes to do it for the chance to fight for the newly vacated WBC title. That matters.
Stopped Saw Rungvisai,
who had not been stopped in a very, very long time. Haven't shared the ring with the likes of Chocolatito and Gallo. They couldn't stop him.
Bam did.
Of course, his most recent outing with Gallo Estrada, who was out for about a year, a little over a year, but whose fault is that? Not Bam's. If you look up the last decade of super flyweights, it was like they had their own version of the Four Kings with Cuadras and Rungvisai and Juan Francisco Estrada and Roman Gonzalez. Bam has taken on 3 of them already, and now he goes after another solid veteran in Guevara, Suleiman said. It's an unbelievable pace. Rodriguez went back down to flyweight to win and unify there against Christian Gonzalez Hernandez and Sonny Edwards, and then on June 29th, he knocked out Estrada with a vicious 7th-round body shot. Rodriguez prepared for Estrada by sparring with 4-division champion Roman Gonzalez in sessions that could have justified $1,000 ringside seats.
Perspective is key. Even if you think that 3 of the 4 kings that Bam fought were up there in age, you have to remember how old Bam is. Bam's 24.
Just 24. So if you looked at those fights through a lens where this kid is making his bones, look at who he's making his bones with, though it helps that he also knocked out an unbeaten champion in Sonny Edwards. If you needed any further indication that Bam's one of the best out there, one of the elites.
His next fight is said to be in Philly.
Fighting in Philadelphia seems an odd choice considering the interest Bam had in fighting next at either home in San Antonio, Texas, back in Arizona, or Vegas. A matchroom boxing fighter, Rodriguez's all-action style is needed for a card expected to be headlined by unbeaten welterweight champion Jaron Ennis in a highly criticized IBF mandatory title defense against Karen Chukadzian, whom Ennis defeated by 3 120-108 scorecards in January of last year. In Mexico's Guevara, 35, Rodriguez meets a fighter coming off a May 12th split decision triumph over Andrew Maloney in Perth, Australia, that caused Maloney to retire.
Very excited about Bam.
Though I noticed that some curb their enthusiasm when it comes to Bam, saying that Cuadras and Rungvisai and Gallo were old when he fought them.
Maybe, but if you looked at those fights as experienced fights for a young fighter, well, that's a hell of a great way to get experience.
That he should leave the super flyweight division, move up to 118, and take on Junto Nakatani. Bear in mind, he just got back up to super flyweight. He literally just moved back up there in his last fight. They want him to hopscotch from 115 up to 118 for Junto.
Unrealistic expectations?
I think so. I think that given the probability that Bam Rodriguez could become the super flyweight division's first undisputed champion in the 4-belt era, the prospect of accomplishing that, because you could give him good odds against Kosei Tanaka, you could give him good odds against the winner of Ioka versus Martinez too. I don't see a reason that he should focus on moving up. Or
are you stupid?
You've been living under a rock the last 4 or 5 years? How do you think Inoue got to where he is right now? How do you think Inoue got to where he is today? It was by becoming undisputed champion at 118, then at 122.
Before he did that, a lot of people didn't know him. There were a lot of people that weren't talking about him. Now they are.
The catalyst that sparked that interest was unifying the 118-pound division and subsequently becoming its undisputed champion, and the interest to see if he could do the same thing at another weight. That's a big part of what got the ball rolling for him. That could get the ball rolling for Bam. So my suggestion is that he stay where he is, stay put, and see about unifying that division first before he goes anywhere.
It's Pedro Guevara fight. Pedro Guevara, WBC interim champion. If Bam beats him, leaves Bam's schedule free all of next year to unify titles with the 2 remaining champions at this weight.
This is good, that he's not being bogged down with a Juan Francisco Estrada rematch. Gallo Estrada was empowered to invoke a rematch against Rodriguez, but instead opted to move up to bantamweight.
That's good.
Since he doesn't have to deal with that, he can hurry up and take care of this so that by the time next year gets here,
Schedule is clear and he's free to unify. Can't complain.
because if he would have had to fight Gallo again, that would have put the Guevara fight at some time next year, and he wouldn't be free to unify until much later on in the coming year. This speeds that process up. It speeds it along, helps it along.
It's good.
They want to have him fight on Boots Ennis's undercard. Behind the scenes, they're pulling the strings to ensure that rematch happens in Philly. It happens here.
Not a rematch that a lot of people wanted, but it does lend itself to the show if Bam makes an appearance on the undercard, so you can look forward to that.
In other news that are around these weights, veteran boxing scribe Fernando Sabatini said he was informed that Chocolatito will fight again in either December of this year or January of the next one in Japan, and it could be for a world title at either 115 or 118. His options are Kosei Tanaka, WBO champion at 115, Yoshiki Takei, WBO champion at 118, or Takuma Inoue, WBA champion at 118.
I happened to catch Chocolatito's return fight a couple of weeks ago in his native Nicaragua. He didn't look half bad, a bit rusty, but thus is expected, having not fought for a year going into that fight.
The fight with Robert Barrera, who he stopped in the 10th round of what was a bantamweight contest. I don't know that at Chocolatito's age, it's at all wise to boil back down to super flyweight, a weight that he hasn't made in well over a year. He hasn't made super flyweight since December of 2022, the trilogy fight with Gallo Estrada. If he returns to action in December or January, well, that will have been 2 years' time since he made that weight.
He's 37.
Close to 40 years old, to take on 4-division champion Kosei Tanaka, who I don't think is a better inside fighter than Chocolatito. I don't think he's as talented as Chocolatito within close quarters, but he is a lot younger and a lot fresher.
There's that.
None of these aforementioned fighters have the same level of experience, champion level experience, that Chocolatito has. He's got them beat in that department, but they are younger fighters, fresher fighters, not as war-torn. So you have to factor that into the equation as well, that physical component. Perhaps it would be better to stay at 118.
Kosei Tanaka and Takuma Inoue are supposed to be boxing next month as part of a 2-day boxing festival over there in Japan.
When you think about when Chocolatito is supposed to return in either December or January, that's a relatively quick turnaround for those two fighters, those two champions, if one of them were to face Chocolatito next. That's kind of fast.
Yeah.
Kind of a tight schedule.
In that respect, perhaps WBO champion Yoshiki Takei would make a little bit more sense.
Yoshiki Takei, who was last in action earlier this month on the 3rd against veteran fighter Daigo Higa.
He won a unanimous decision. Given that Yoshiki just fought and he will have more time to recover than those fighters would,
maybe it would make more sense for Chocolatito to fight him for his WBO title, and not just that, Yoshiki is less experienced than those fighters. He's less experienced than Kosei Tanaka, than Takuma Inoue. He has less fights, less rounds in the bank. For an aging 37-year-old fighter at his 5th weight,
Choco needs every advantage he can get, and one advantage that he'd have over Yoshiki is he is, by and large, a more experienced fighter, better at pacing himself, because I've been watching Yoshiki and I noticed that this guy doesn't have the best engine, doesn't have the best defense. He can punch.
Got power, but there does seem to be a gas tank issue there. I chalk it up to a lack of experience. That a guy that doesn't have that many fights and that many rounds in the bank isn't going to have the best cardio. He has to learn over time to pace himself, and he still hasn't.
Choco can use that.
Chocolatito, who can fight at a feverish pace for all 36 minutes of a 12-round fight, mid-range to inside, throwing punches and bunches. He's very good within close quarters. If he pushes Yoshiki, he can wear him out, wear him down.
Body shots, uppercuts up the middle, staying with him, staying on him, forcing him to work.
Draining his battery in the process. Because of Yoshiki's lack of experience, I think that should be the guy that Chocolatito fights in what is his return fight to the land of the rising sun. People tend to forget that before Chocolatito was fighting on HBO, he was fighting in Japan. He's got a long-standing relationship with Mr. Akihiko Honda of Taken Promotions.
That relationship is still alive and well.
To give Chocolatito another crack at the apple, another chance to become a world champion at a fifth weight.
I'm okay with either fight, a Takuma Inoue fight or a Yoshiki Takei fight. I think Takuma has a little bit more name value because of his brother, because of Naoya.
So like I said, because Takuma's about to fight next month and they want to bring Choco over there in either December or January, that's a tight schedule. That's pushing it.
Yoshiki would be more ideal.
And just thinking aloud because thinking's allowed. Irrespective of who Chocolatito does fight, if it's at 118 and he actually wins, he becomes a champion at a fifth weight, that will be enough to get him back on the Ring IQ pound for pound list. At 37 years old, you would have to be one of the best fighters in the world if you can still win a title at a fifth weight at that age. So he'll be back on there.
If he wins.
Not every fighter exhibits that kind of ability, that kind of longevity in a situation where he actually does this.
He's back on.
Of course, you have to wonder if the old-timer's not pushing it. Sprinkle of optimism. If he actually wins and pulls this off against either Yoshiki or Takuma, that's really something. We'll see if they make it happen. And finally, in men's heavyweight news ahead of this weekend's mega match, very tense Anthony Joshua is ready for Daniel Dubois after learning from previous mistakes.
And the pain of those mistakes.
I'm tense, he told DAZN. I'm tense. The fight's around the corner. I don't forget that the fight's around the corner. This is chilled, though. We're not fighting today, so I'm chilled. But in terms of where I'm at, there's a time when I was doing what I was doing, and in front of everyone. On the live stage, I was changing my style. I was trying to develop a different style of boxing. It weren't so much of a fan-friendly style either. Then I teamed up with Ben Davisson again, and we were on the same page, and we changed the style again, but we changed for the better. It's not just me doing it of my own accord. Ben's got a good eye for detail, and he gets it, and I get it as well.
It's a dynamic duo.
Was something more personal. I fought for the championship in my 16th fight, stopping Charles Martin in 2016, so I was really early in my career. Even though I was winning, I'm at a level where I'm going to consistently fight people at this level, and people that are coming up to my level as well. I gotta get better, and if I don't start now, it's gonna be too late. So I went on that journey trying to improve. When I fought Usyk, I tried to change my style in the first fight, then I changed it again for the second. Pulev, I was hands in the air, loose shoulders. I was trying to develop in different aspects, and then Ben pulled it all together at the last minute. When you're doing something so long, sometimes you just have to remember how good you are. Sometimes we forget that. You've just got to look back and say, I'm actually good at what I do.
He's got a solid base. He's got the foundation and a lot of tools. He just needs to know which ones to use given the opponent.
I was watching some of my amateur fights. I had some skills, when I was coming through. Show them how good I am, let them see my skills, and I started putting it all back together again, and that's where I'm at. I want to show myself I'm actually good at what I do, and let me express that.
You could see that he was working on things after the second fight with Andy Ruiz. Some interpreted that as Anthony Joshua being hesitant, tentative. He doesn't want to pull the trigger.
He wanted to take a more cerebral approach, but you don't want to be cerebral just for the sake of being cerebral. What you want to do is what's appropriate in the situation. So in one situation, it might actually behoove you to be more cerebral, and in another,
it might not, seemingly. What Ben Davisson is helping him do is figure out which is which and when.
My mentality is, if I draw a line and put fear on one side and confidence on the other, I'm still going into the ring. What one am I going to choose? The heavyweight continued, also aware that a long sought-after fight with Tyson Fury is potentially at stake. Something always is, at this level.
There's always another fight.
I'm confident, I believe in myself, and I think that's the right mentality to have. We were talking and saying, let's now watch a fighter on YouTube, and I'm thinking, he's amazing. So I said to myself, why can't I look at myself, take myself out of the equation personally, and say, I'm going to be in that situation on Saturday? Why don't I be everything I dream of being? Why do I have to look at someone else and say, they're amazing? Why can't I step up to the plate and be amazing myself? So I've been trying to level up and get that little bit closer to my own greatness. It's something I've been thinking about and experience. I'm going to be walking out into that ring, and I'm going to be a certain mentality that is going to be unstoppable. I don't want to look back on Sunday morning and be, if only I'd done that. I've got a chance to make it happen, so why not? I think over the years, Anthony Joshua has justifiable cause to wrestle with his own self-confidence because so many people are so quick to tear him down,
while glossing over the flaws in others, so that when a Tyson Fury gets a gift decision that's widely publicized over a John McDermott and everybody acts like it didn't happen,
or a Wilder, who is so obviously not a fundamentally sound fighter, doesn't have coordination or cardio, he's missing so much in so many areas, but they tear you down to talk those guys up, you might start to doubt yourself. You might lose your confidence.
So many people have taken so many shots so often, you might.
That he might have wrestled with this comes as no surprise. It's one of those things that only time can heal. But that he's still here and still fighting in big fights, and that he still is who he is while Deontay Wilder's career circles the drain and Tyson Fury suffers his first professional loss, it adds to his confidence that he's better than he's given credit for. He's better than those guys said he was.
His critics that were putting those two guys on a pedestal, what do you got to say now?
When a Deontay Wilder can't make it past a Joseph Parker, who he was so widely favored to beat, or when Anthony dispatches the same Otto Wallin that sliced up Tyson Fury's face, knocks out the same Francis Ngannou that knocked down Tyson Fury.
If you've been following this channel long enough, you'll know that for years, I was asking for the Joshua versus Wallin fight because I knew how it would go. I knew what would happen. It was the same with the Ngannou fight right after the Fury fight. I said, put that guy in the ring with AJ, watch what happens. These are the confidence-building fights that he needed.
So I am fairly confident that he can handle this assignment. Daniel is a credible opponent. He's a credible threat.
But not so unique that Anthony Joshua hasn't seen something like this before. I think Daniel's approach will be a mirror image of Alexander Povetkin's approach years ago. He's going to come in hard and fast and aggressive.
Hunker down and look to land bombs, look to land big hooks. Anthony was able to handle that. I think he'll be able to handle this.
Because this is a bigger target, and this ain't an Olympic gold medalist he's dealing with.
Not as tricky and not as compact as a Povetkin. Anthony has been here with this kind of guy before.
So I think he knocks him out.